Hi, and welcome to Chock's Hangar. That was Simon and Garfunkel, Mrs. Robinson, of course, from the Graduate movie. And you might be wondering why I've picked that song to do with flight simulators. And that's because what we're looking at today is Helicopter Simulator, which is new. It's out in beta, so you can get it for 20 quid at the moment off Steam. And it features the Robinson R22, hence the song. See, always thinking, yeah? Up here for thinking, down here for strumming. So, Helicopter Simulator. Like I say, it's in beta, but it's pretty good already. And I don't think too many people have reviewed it, so let's give it a look, shall we? You ready? Come on, let's go. Get your chopper out.
Okay, so here we are in Helicopter Simulator. This is made by a company called Line Studio. It's currently an early access available via Steam, so effectively you're buying into a beta version, keep that in mind. And it's £19.49, which is roughly 20 quid, so roughly $20, roughly 20 euros. It's a 4 gigabyte download, so it doesn't take up a lot of room on your system. Now, I'm going to preface this review by pointing out that I am not a real-world helicopter pilot. I'm a real-world fixed-wing pilot. I've flown a lot of planes, but I can count the amount of times I've been in a real helicopter on just a bit more than one hand. And of those times, I've only ever had a little mess about with the controls in a helicopter. I've read up a lot on helicopters and watched a lot of movies about them and stuff like that. So I do know a fair bit about helicopters, but as I say, I'm not a real-world helicopter pilot, so you can take anything that I say for what it is. I'm going to try and tell you the real deal, but bear in mind I'm not a real world helicopter pilot. Now we've got that out of the way, let's crack on with the review. So before we actually get into it and look at the simulator of the helicopter and the game aspects, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the options. So if we look up on the left hand side, you can see Helicopter Simulator. As I say, it's made by a company called Line Studio. That's Lines, lines like lines of coke if you sniff them. Not that I'm recommending that. Drugs are bad, kids. Now, so we've got photo mode. And you can see that what this does is it puts you into a mode where you can move the camera around and take screenshots and hide the user interface and what have you. So that's what that does. It's got a built-in take screenshots thing that'll let you mess around with. Then what we've got is we've got the gallery for if you have taken some screenshots and you want to check them out. Now keep in mind that I've not got any gallery pictures in here because I'm not particularly bothered about that at the minute. I probably will do at some point. But keep in mind that the red helicopter that you can see here is the colour that your helicopter starts out with. It doesn't have that registration on it and it doesn't have that stripe on the side, but your helicopter starts off a basic red colour. So when you see my helicopter in the simulator, when we take a look at it on this review, mine's a really horrible pink colour. I did that to show you that you can customise the paint of the helicopter. You can paint it pretty much any colour you like. So don't panic. You don't have to have a pink helicopter if you don't want to. Now, moving down on the menu items on the left-hand side, we can see that you can load games, you can save games, and then there are settings for the game. Now, I have put most of the settings on the highest settings that they can go on. The only one that I haven't got on the highest level is the sound, for obvious reasons, because when we start the engine you wouldn't be able to hear me talking and stuff like that. I've put it on all the high settings so you can see what this thing runs like. Then what you've got is you've got game settings. Now you can see that there are a lot of assists that you can put on for the controls and stuff like that. So if you've not got a particularly complicated joystick and controller setup, what you can do is you can put assists on, or if you're not that used to flying a helicopter and you're having trouble with the tail rotor control, you can put assists on for that sort of thing if you want. And you can see that I've got a couple of those on at the moment because I'm going to be flying this round and talking to you. I might turn them off so that you can see that this thing is, like a real helicopter, which can be a little bit tricky to fly. There is another option on there that I might mess around with, which is show HUD HUD head-up display. What that will let you do is that will let you have enlarged versions of your instruments on screen displaying, so that you don't have to sort of like squint to look at the instruments in the virtual cockpit. You can see that down at the bottom of this list, it is VR capable, so if you're into virtual reality, it'll do that, and you can also use Track IR with it as well if you want. I've not got my Track IR plugged in at the minute, but you can do that if you want to, and it works okay. So then what we've got, so that's your game, the settings there. And then what you've got is you've got the control settings. Now, the controls, there are lots of them, and you can customize them. It can be a bit of a faff to customize them, but if you spend a bit of time doing it, you can have them pretty good for what you want. Most of them you won't want to mess around with. So, for example, when we look up here, you can see that there are a lot of options for where you can play around with the controls. Now, because this has got a sort of first-person mode where you can walk around and, get out of your helicopter and do walk-around inspections of it and dolly it in and out of the hangar and all that kind of stuff, there is a walk-around mode. The default controls, if you're used to first-person shooter games and that kind of thing, they're similar controls. WAS and D on the keyboard to walk around, and crouch is holding down the control key, and if you want to run, you hold down the shift key. So you can mess around with them if you want to, but you don't have to. Then what we've got the interaction menu. This is usually if you've got to pick up objects, move them around, it's usually on the left and right mouse buttons. You can zoom by clicking the mouse wheel, so you don't have to faff around with those if you don't want to. Then what you've got the helicopter controls. These you will want to customize based on what control you've got. Now, if you've seen my YouTube channel, you'll see that there is a review on my channel of the Thrustmaster T-Flight HOTAS controller, which is a joystick and a throttle control, and I am using that for this review because it's a good controller and it's pretty cheap. That thing has got two rudder functions on it. It's got a twist rudder function on the main joystick, but it's also got a paddle rudder function on the front side of the throttle control. So I'll take you through what I've got set up on this so you can get an idea of what controls I've put on this thing. So the collective pitch lever I have on my left throttle control axis, so when I increase the throttle, that's raising the collective, and when I decrease the throttle, that's lowering the collective. Then on the cyclic, which is the main joystick in a helicopter, I've got that on the same as I would have for the elevator and aileron controls on an aeroplane. So when I push my main joystick backwards and forwards, I'm pushing the cyclic forwards and backwards to make the helicopter go forwards or backwards. And if I move it left and right, which would be the ailerons in a normal aeroplane, I'm moving the cyclic to the left or the right to sort of move the thing, steer it to the left or steer it to the right. Then what I've got the rudder control. The rudder control is really the tail rotor control in a helicopter, and you can see on that what I've got the rudder control that's on the front side of the throttle, so I'm operating that with my fingers. Whereas the throttle control, what I've got that on is I've got that on axis 4. For my joystick setup, which is the twist function on the main joystick. So I'm operating the engine throttle with the twist function on my main joystick, and I'm operating the tail rotor with the rudder function on the throttle. I'm operating the collective by increasing and decreasing my throttle control, and I'm using the cyclic like you would the main joystick or yoke in a normal aeroplane. And I'm finding that that's pretty okay. I might mess around with that a little bit, but that's what the controls that I've got on there. If you haven't got a fancy joystick, keep in mind that there are a lot of assists that you can put on to help you out with that stuff. So then what we can do is we can customize the views, so you can move them around a bit if you want to. Then what we've got is there is an option for computer. Now, it's not referring to the computer that I'm running the simulator on, so it's not talking about my PC. What it's talking about is, we'll see it in a moment, you have a little office in your hangar in the game, and it has a computer on the desk, and you interact with that to do training missions and customize your helicopter, and do the missions that you get sort of like virtually paid for and stuff like that. So you can faff around with that if you want to. We'll see it in a moment or two. Last but not least, if you wanted to faff around with the menu controls, you can do that as well. If you do faff around with these controls, sometimes what you'll have to do is you'll have to hit a validate button. One last thing, there is a detect mouse inputs tick box on there. You can turn that on or off, and you might want to do that because what you can have if you don't do that is you can have your main computer mouse moving around, and it can sort of conflict a bit with the center click spot of the game and what have you. So we might see me messing around with that. If you have problems with your mouse getting in the way, try that detect mouse inputs on there. Then what we've got is we've got resume and we've got exit. So I've got a saved game loaded up at the minute, so I'm going to hit resume and that'll put us back in the game. So we've got that thing there. Now you can see that I've not got a visible mouse pointer on the screen, so I don't need to go back into those controls and hit detect mouse inputs. But if you needed to get rid of it, toggling that would do it. So here we are where we start off when you load up the game. Now when you load up the game first and you've not used the helicopter at all, it's in your hangar in this area here, and the first thing that you have to do is you have to get it out to the helipad. So what you've got is you've got this thing, which is the dolly system that you can attach to the front of the helicopter. You put that lug in the nose of the helicopter, and then it will let you tow the thing. And the other thing that you have to do, because the Robinson R22 helicopter has skids and no wheels, is you have to pick up these wheels and you have to attach them to the landing skid and put them on there. So that's what this thing is here. If I grab hold of this, you can see that I can maneuver that thing backwards and forwards, and if I want to drop it, I can do. So that's what that's about. The computer that I was referring to, if you want to pick stuff up here, incidentally, for example, that little Rubik's cube puzzle on the desk, which I missed. If I go there and grab that, you can pick stuff up. That was a left click, and if I click again, you can drop it. So this is the computer that it was referring to on the options, and you can see left button to mouse click to interact with it, and it's a little iMac. And there are three main things on here. This one here that you can see has got a 4 icon on it there is telling me that there are 4 training missions that I could do if I want to. So if you don't know how to auto-rotate a helicopter, or you don't know how to start it up or do a pre-flight or what have you, there are all these sort of lessons in here that you can do if you want to. There is this thing here where you can customize your helicopter. So you can come in here and you can see that there is a paint job bit on here. In order to customize your helicopter, you would have to put that dolly on it, put the wheels on it, and drag it into the hangar, into the customization area. But you can paint your helicopter, change the registration plate of it, and all that kind of stuff. There is a helicopter dealer there. Now notice that it says website under maintenance, because this is an early access, and there is actually only one helicopter in the game simulator at the moment, which is the Robinson R22, but there are 2 variants of it. There is the R22 standard, which is the Robinson R22 beta, and then there is the Robinson R22 Mariner, which is the float equipped version of the Robinson R22, which I don't think the real Robinson company make that anymore, but they did make it as a genuine helicopter. So we might see more helicopters appear in this simulator as it comes out of its early access and beta and stuff like that. I don't know, but at the moment there is only 1/2 helicopters in the game. And then what you've got is you've got parts finder where you can customize it. You can see up on the top right, I've got my account balance there, that you get paid for missions and stuff like that. So if you want to paint your helicopter, it's going to cost you like $600 to paint it or what have you, that kind of thing. So that's what that is. So this is the computer where you go and find your missions. And if you want your missions, that's this thing up here. You can see archive missions that I've done, like you've got a photograph somewhere and stuff like that, and then you can see on the inbox that there is a landing for verification, which is a mission where you've got to fly out to a posh yacht that's sailing around the island that you're on, and you've got to land on it and verify that it's all okay, and then you've got to take off and fly back to your base and stuff like that. So that's what that's all about. So let's get rid of that, and then let's have a look at how this helicopter works. You can play around with that toy helicopter if you want as well. Not sure you'd want to, but there you go. So here I am using the W, A, S and D keys. D key to go backwards, S key to go backwards, W key to go forward, D key to shift to the right, S key to shift to the left, no, that'd be the A key. If I hold down the shift key, I can run, and if I hold down the control key, I can crouch. Oh, the other thing is that you can close the hangar doors if you want to, or open the hangar doors. So there's like a little click spot where you can interact with them if you want to. So here we are at your little helicopter base, if you will, and you can see the terrain. I'll just give you a close-up of the terrain. So we've got grass on there, so it's kind of nice, and trees and stuff like that. The one thing that doesn't happen with that grass, which I have noticed, is that when your helicopter's hovering over the grass doesn't move, and dust doesn't really kick up too much. I don't know whether they're going to change that, but it would be nice if the grass moved for the downwash and stuff like that. You can see that you can see the sea out there. We'll fly out to that when we get the helicopter going. But the terrain that you've got here is, because it's early access, it's not particularly detailed. There are some towns on it and buildings and stuff like that. There will eventually be traffic driving around and stuff like that. But the scenery is limited to this island, which is only sort of like a few miles long and a few miles wide. So the terrain isn't massive. But what we're really interested in is the helicopter. So here it is, Robinson R22 Beta 2. Now, keep in mind, you don't have to have it this pink colour. I painted it this pink colour just because I thought it would be fun to show you that you can paint your helicopter whatever colour you like. There is a very sort of comprehensive custom thing that's a bit like how you pick colours in Photoshop with like hue, saturation and brightness and stuff like that. So you can have your helicopter be pretty much any colour you like, and then what you can do is you can have graphics on it with stripes and stuff like that, and you can change the registration of the thing. Anyway, let's take a look at this helicopter, because it's very, very detailed and very realistic in a lot of ways. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock the door and I'm going to open the door, and then I'm going to get in the thing. And the reason that I'm doing this is you'll notice that the control tiller is ghosted out at the moment, and that's so that it's not getting in the way of the controls that you operate. If you want to actually use that, what you do is you can see there I'm getting a tip to say click to interact. If I click that, then I'll be in the controllers. But what I'm going to do at the moment is I'm going to hit the middle mouse button to zoom the view, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the battery there. So you see that we get some lights on the dashboard, if you will, and I'm going to get out. Now I'll show you why I've done that in a moment. So if you notice what lights are lit up on the dashboard, because what we're going to do is we're going to do a bit of a walk around inspection of this and check it out. Now, so I'm going to open up this panel here, and we can do an inspection of this thing. And the reason that we put the lights on is because we're going to check this thing here in a minute. Now, anything that you can check, you'll get a little tooltip for it when you hover over it. So if I left click there, I can check that the drive belts are okay. Now, the Robinson R22 Beta has a Lycoming 0320 or 360 engine. I can't remember which is, either the 320 or the 360, which is similar to what you find in things like the Piper Cherokee and the Cessna 172. They're normally about 160 horsepower, 140 horsepower, and it is basically the same engine that you get in that aeroplane. You can see that, and that's a flat four horizontally opposed engine, so you can see the caps on the end of the two cylinders there, and there's two on the other side. So if we click and hold to check, you can see that the engine's in good general condition, and we can start checking other various bits on here like that. So the fan's in good condition. Now, how it actually works on this helicopter is the engine is kind of like the other way around from what it would be in a Cessna. So the bit that the propeller would be attached to is round about there, but instead there is a drive belt that goes up here, and if I stand up, that drive belt, you can see the top of it there, and that's connected to a drive shaft, and then there's a gear system there that goes up to the main rotor blade, but it also has a shaft that goes back to the tail rotor, and the bit that you can see there, which I've got, is the control linkage to the tail rotor. So if you move the cyclic backwards and forwards, that would be moving this backwards and forwards to change the pitch of the tail rotor blades, and we can check that if we want to. So I'm going to do that. So it'll let me do that. There we go. So it's got that. So it's saying use axis D and A to move. So I'm testing to see that that thing's free, which you would actually do on a genuine walk around of this. Now, when I'm moving that, you'll see if you could see the tail rotor blades are shifting, and that's that. This gives you an idea of sort of like the realism of this thing. It's pretty realistic in the way that it's modelled, and not just sort of visually. Things are connected and stuff like that. The other thing worth noting on here is that the Robinson R22 has, and I'll zoom in a little bit, if you can see my mouse pointer, it's over a little red guarded switch on the left hand side of the cockpit panel. That is the clutch control. Now the clutch control, what it does on a Robinson R22 is it moves that drive belt into sort of gear. It engages it with a sprag clutch, and the reason for that is that the Lycoming engine on this, you don't want anything preventing it from starting, and the weight of the helicopter blades is quite heavy. So what you do is you start a helicopter without the clutch engaged, and then when the rotor blades are up to speed and what have you, when the engine's up to speed, what you then do is you engage the clutch. That moves that belt up into gear, so it's a bit like putting a car in gear, and it slowly engages it so that there isn't a big shock. On the real thing and in the simulator, it makes a clunking noise when the sprag clutch disengages. So that's what the clutch is, and that's pretty realistic. Now the other thing that we've got on here is this panel here, and you can see that this will let you check it as well. So it's got things like MR and TR. All right, MR, main rotor, TR, tail rotor, and the low bit is referring to the fuel. So what we can do is we could do what you do on the real thing. Now, if you look at the cockpit panel with the lights on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press this main rotor light on here. Did you see the light up on the dashboard? Like that, and then we can move to the next one. So if we zoom in and get the mouse over that, we've got lights on there. This is what you do on the real thing, yeah. So it's pretty realistic. The other bits that are on here, incidentally, that's a fuse, which you can unscrew, and on the real thing, that's a spare fuse, so you can unscrew that. So if your fuse is gone, you've got another one in there if you want to. Now, this thing here where it says push to open, you can, if I zoom out and close these panels, so I'm going to close that panel there, and I'm going to crouch down there. That's the oil cooler intake, which opens, and then there is another bit that you can open, which is that part there, and you can do an inspection in there. Now, there would be a few things that you would actually check on the real thing, but one of the things that you certainly would check is there's a little sight window for the oil gauge on the real R22, and you can see the oil level on it. It would need to be sort of like probably about half, 2/3 or something like that, but you can do that and check, and it says fuel, no impurities and stuff like that. Now, if I was being really picky about this, I could say that panel on the inside hasn't got the sort of thick metal bit along the bottom that is on the real thing. But are we really going to be that picky? This thing's pretty good and quite detailed. So all kinds of things that you can check, like checking the condition of the engine, checking the condition of the fan and stuff like that. All kind of fun stuff. And then we can come down here and we can check the condition of the anti-collision beacon, and then we can come around here and we can check the tail rotor to make sure that's okay. So we can go on here and we can click on that, and we can make sure that that's free and not damaged and it's all been checked and what have you. And then we can come back here, and there are various bits that we could check on here. So if I wanted to check the battery, I can do that and make sure that that's all right, and I can go and check the alternator. There's an air intake there that I can check. I can check the fuel cap to make sure that's on. I can check the pitot tube to make sure that's all right. I can come up here and I can check the main rotor head condition on here, and I can also, providing the rotor brake isn't engaged, I can interact with the rotor blades. Now, what that tells me is, because I can move the rotor blades there, it tells me that the rotor brake isn't engaged in the cockpit. So, lots and lots of things you can check. There's other things that you can check, like the landing light on the front and the condition of the lights on the side and all that kind of stuff. And you can open this other door as well if you want to. So that gives you an indication of if you're into all that kind of like doing realistic walkarounds and all that kind of stuff, then it's cool. Now, so we'll get in the thing and we'll shut the door. So we close the door, and then we probably want to lock it as well. And here we are in the cockpit. Battery is already on, so I don't need to worry about that. But on the real thing, what you would probably do is you'd probably fasten that seatbelt so it wasn't flapping around. You can do that with the seatbelt on this side as well. What we probably do want is we want the fuel valve on, like that. And then what we want to do is we want to check all this stuff, and that up there is the rotor brake, which is off at the minute, which means that we're engaged. So I probably want to put the rotor brake on because I'm going to be starting the engine. So let's have a look at some of the other stuff. So we can check the circuit breakers to make sure they're all right, and then what we can do is we can take the friction lock off the collective pitch lever, so that we can move that freely. That's where the twist grip throttle is on the collective. We can put the rotor governor on, we can put the carburetor heat on, like that. We can turn the cyclic lever's friction lock off so that can move freely. We can put the landing light switch on, we can put the mixture on, we can change the temperature setting on there. The battery is already on. I'm going to put the alternator on, I'm going to put the avionics on, I'm going to put the lights on and the probes on, and I'll put the panel lights on if I wanted to fly the thing at night, and I want to check that the altimeter's set right and stuff like that, and you can see that we've got the rotor brake on there at the minute, which is that warning light. So if you wanted to get rid of that, you can go and get the rotor brake off if you like that. There's the clutch. We want the clutch off while we are starting, and I'm zoomed in at the minute, so what I probably want to do is I probably want to start this thing. So when I've started it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press on here, and then I'll be able to interact with the controls. So here we go, magnetos to both, and then I'm starting it, and then I want to interact with this thing here. And that will let me rev the thing up a little bit. Now, I can, if I want to, look at these instruments here, but it can be a bit difficult to see what you're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the options on here, and I go to the game settings, and I'm going to say show the head-up display on there, like that. And now what we've got is we've got this row of 5 instruments I should say, on there. So from left to right, airspeed indicator with the VNE of just a little bit past 100 knots, altimeter, and because we are above sea level, even though the altimeter is set to 0 at sea level, we're reading at about 390 feet. You got a compass, you got a vertical speed indicator, and then the really important one is the gauge on the right hand side. The needle on the left hand side is the throttle RPM, and the needle on the right hand side is the temperature gauge. So if I twist the throttle, which on my controller is the main joystick's twist function that a lot of people use for rudder, so I can move that to the left, and I'm taking the RPM down, and I can move that to the right, and I'm taking the RPM up, like that. And what will eventually start happening is that temperature gauge should start climbing, but it will only really start climbing when I've got the rotor engaged, because that's when the oil's going to start warming up. So we'll do that in a moment or two. Important throttle settings on this is if you want to shut down a Robinson R22's engine, you want the throttle at about 60 RPM there, and you want to hold it there for a couple of minutes to let the engine cool down a little bit. And normally what you want for most manoeuvring and stuff like that is you want it in the green band there, like that. If it starts dropping out of that, what you'll hear is you'll hear a little alert sound going, and you'll see a light up on the dashboard, and that's warning that you've got low rotor RPM, which is an important thing in the Robinson R22 because it's not massively powerful, and it hasn't got really heavy rotor blades with lots of momentum on them, which is why you have to auto rotate it at about 65 knots to really keep the energy up and stuff like that. So everything seems to be okay on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the rotor brake off, and then what we're going to do is we're going to engage the clutch. Now I can press that guarded switch there to engage it, and you would normally leave that in when you're flying because obviously you don't want to disengage the rotor blade. You can see I can use a keyboard shortcut as well if I want to. So and do that. And what should happen now is the rotor blades should start picking up speed with a bit of luck. And you can see that they are doing. If I go on the external view, you can see that rotor blades picking up speed. And now if you look at that temperature gauge, you can see that that temperature gauge is climbing as the oil's sort of heating up and the engine's heating up and all that sort of thing, and the exhaust and what have you. So if we go back in the cockpit view, that was V on the default settings for the keys. So I'll just take you through what controls I've got on my T-Flight HOTAS, which, as I said, I've reviewed on my YouTube channel. So if you're curious about what controller I'm using, there's a review of it on my channel. So left on the main joystick is taking the cyclic to the left. Right on the main joystick is taking the cyclic to the right. So that's similar to the ailerons on an aeroplane. If I push it forward, which would be down elevator normally on an aeroplane, and the cyclic's going forward, and I pull it back, and that's would normally be up elevator on a fixed wing aeroplane, and that's taking the cyclic back. So basically, whatever direction I want to go to, I'm moving this little tiller. The real Robinson R22 is very, very sensitive. And so you wouldn't be giving it massive movements like that. You'd be real gentle stuff and what have you, because it's a training helicopter and it's intended to get you used to sort of operating more complicated helicopters. So if we go down here, now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure that I've not got much throttle settings on here, because I'm going to be taking the collective up, and if I've got the collective up and I've got lots of throttle on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift off. So I'm moving my throttle lever forward, like that, and we nearly did lift off there. I'm moving my throttle lever forward to get the collective up, and I'm moving it back to go down, and the twist throttle that would be on that collective lever would be my twist function on my main joystick. So the only other thing that I've got going on my controllers is something to control the tail rotor on this thing. And if you look at those pedals down at the floor, you can see left and right tail rotor settings, and what they are is that's the rudder control on the front side of my throttle, so I'm operating that with my fingers. Now what that tells you is that it's worthwhile having all of the controls assigned to stuff if you want to have a bit of fun with this thing. So I'm just going to check here. The rotor governor is on, and the carburetor heat is on, and everything's all fab and groovy, so we're going to take off. So normally what you would do is you would give it a little bit of throttle, and then give it a little bit of up collective, and you'd give it a little bit of opposite tail rotor to stop the thing spinning when it lifts off. So I'm going to do that. So got a bit of throttle, and we're going up with the collective, and we're giving it a bit of left. And up we go. And that's warning me with that light on the dashboard and that siren that I've got low rotor RPM, which is something that you've got to be really careful of in a low-powered helicopter like this, because that's your wing that's spinning around there. We've got this thing flying around. Now, if you've got a mission in the game to do something, what you'll get is you'll get a compass pointer on the top of the screen with a waypoint that you've got to go to. So when you've got missions to do, it just tells you on screen. You just basically fly towards the dot that appears on a compass bar up on the top. But then again, this island isn't particularly massive anyway, so you know, apart from being able to find your way back to your base, you don't really need it too much. There's no traffic on the roads at the minute, but I know that the developer is working on the AI to get that functioning, and the towns are not particularly exciting looking buildings. Most of them are a little more than that little box that you can see there. You can see the coast does have animated waves on it, but the ocean itself isn't particularly realistically animated. So the terrain's okay, but it's not fantastic. It's good enough for what you want. I've got a low rotor RPM warning. Should pick up in a minute or two. And the other thing I've got to be watching out for here is the airspeed indicator, because I don't want to go past the VNE, velocity never exceed, on this thing. Although I am deliberately going to crash this in a moment, just to show you a very nice feature of this simulator. So are you ready? We're going to crash this thing on purpose. Oops. Now, the reason that I did that is you can see it says impact was too strong, but here's a really great feature of this. I'm going to hit rewind, and I'm going to hit R, and we're back again. That, and you know, I didn't have to wait for a load screen or anything like that. So if you're not that used to flying helicopters, that's a really nice feature of this simulator. If you cock up, normally what you can do is you can rewind it to a point where you had the thing under control, and you don't have to worry about sort of like ruining your game or loading it up or anything like that. So normally if you've got a mission to land somewhere, there'll be a sort of on-screen indication of where you're supposed to land. So if my mission was to land on one of those helipads, there'd be a little marker on there telling me how to do it. Now, I am not, by any stretch of the imagination, a helicopter pilot, but you'll see that even I can manage to land this thing, and I've even managed to land it on ships that were moving and stuff like that. So it's kind of fun. So, I'll tie this thing down. I think I'm going to come round again for that, because I kind of cocked it up a little bit. A bit more under control now. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Oh, go on. There we go. Not the best landing, but yeah, I'm trying to sort of like think about what I'm going to say in the review whilst I'm doing that. Yeah, so I'm not normally that terrible at landing the thing, but there you go. Anyway, I'm going to stick this on the external view, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this thing off the deck. All right, so I'm increasing the throttle there, and taking the collective pitch lever up like that. I'm going to try and fly this thing around on the external view. So you can see there that it is actually fairly easy to fly this thing reasonably precisely. So you can have a bit of fun with it, and you don't have to be kind of like the world's expert at flying helicopters to be able to do that. The camera was freaking out a little bit there. So there you go. That's the Lion Studios helicopter simulator. Now, if we go back in the cockpit, so that's V on the keyboard, to shut this thing down, pretty simple, really. I need to sort of get on the switches. I could use the keyboard shortcuts for that if I wanted to, and as I say, I can go into the game controls there. I can say, oh, I don't want the hood on, like that. So I've got rid of that, and that's no longer in the way. So you can see there that if I move that, it says left mouse button to interact. right click to give a checklist shutdown where it'll take you through it. So I'm going to go left click to interact. Now the controls are inactive. I'm moving my joystick and those controls aren't moving. So what I should be able to do is I should be able to shut this thing down. So I'm going to turn off the landing light. I'm going to put the cyclics friction lock on. I'm going to put the collectives friction lock on. I'm going to turn off the carburetor heat. I'm going to turn off the rotor governor. I'm going to put the rotor brake on. I'm going to put the clutch out, so the rotor blades will be slowing down because they're no longer connected. I'm going to turn off the cockpit lights. The landing lights is already off. I'm going to turn off the navigation lights. I'm going to turn off the strobe lights, turn off the avionics. The alternator can get turned off. So the only things that I need to do is turn the battery off, and then what I can do is I can either cut the mixture, or I can turn off the magnetos and what have you. So there we go, mixture off like that, and then there's the magnetos off. So the only other thing that I need to do is make sure that the fuel valve is off. Now realistically, what I would be doing, if you look at this gauge here, what I would be doing is I would be throttling down and holding the throttle at about 60 on there and keeping it there for 2 or 3 minutes before I actually shut down. And all of these warning lights and stuff like that for low rotor RPM and stuff like that, you might be watching some of those, you know, and whether the governor's on and all this kind of stuff. So if you like realistic helicopter simulators, this is kind of cool. Middle mouse button to zoom out, and then what I can do is I can open this thing up and I can get out, and now I'm able to move around. So what I can do is I can close the door like that, and I can go on, close, unlock it, and there you go. Bob's your uncle. So that's Lines Studios helicopter simulator early access sort of beta version. Do I recommend it? Well, if you like helicopters and you want a bit of fun flying them and you want something that's sort of fairly realistic that you can mess around with, I think for 20 quid you can't go wrong. And obviously, you know, the success of whether this thing gets developed more successfully is probably somewhat dependent on whether people show a bit of faith in it and buy it anyway. So if you do like helicopters, it's probably worth buying anyway, even if it wasn't that great. But I think it's actually quite a good helicopter simulator. It's not absolutely 100% super duper realistic, but if you turn off the assists, it can be quite hard to fly. So it is sort of pretty realistic, and certainly among the most realistic helicopter simulators that you can get for a PC. And you know, obviously, if it gets developed a bit more, then the developer would be inclined to sort of put more helicopters in it, because I think, you know, if you could get a Jet Ranger in this, or a Hughes 500, or, you know, a Huey, it'd be just brilliant in this, you know. And then it's got the potential to have other stuff in it that would be really, really cool, like a CH-47 Chinook or something like that, and more terrains and things like that. I think it'd be fantastic, because the basic helicopter stuff is in there and works really, really well. So if you like helicopters, give it a look. Like I say, I think it's worth 20 quid. Anyway, that's it for this episode of Chock's Hangar. We've got another one coming up next week. Hopefully we're reviewing the Just Flight Piper Arrow, which is supposed to be out next week. I've already done some preliminary stuff for the video for that, and that'll be for Microsoft's new flight simulator. And another one that's coming up is Aerosoft CRJ for Microsoft Flight Simulator, which I'm definitely going to be covering. So there's, if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit subscribe, hit the notifications, and you'll get alerts of when new stuff's out. Beyond that, everybody stay safe while we're coming out of the pandemic. We've only got about 2 or 3 months more to put up with that, and then hopefully we'll be back to normal and stuff like that. So stay safe, everybody. Happy landings, and have fun. Cheery bye.